Paramahamsa Parajikacharya, also Tata Satashi Srimad, His Divine Grace Savaya, Charanada Bhaktivedanta, Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON, Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Mentavoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Friends, say hello, Shri Krishna, Chaitanya Prabhu, Nityananda, Shri Dvaita Gadadhara, Shri Vasudeva Gaur, Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna, Gopika Sayam Kun, Radhakun, Giri, Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Ki Jai, Jardhan Ki Jai, Shagada Swami Ki Jai, Shrimati Lasadevi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Go, all glories to the assembled.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Go. All right. Whoops. Now it's really loud. Very loud. No, so everyone could hear.
I'm just in the corner and I have tinnitus, so
Okay.
so well, but I don't want to disturb you.
So I'll just warn you before I yell Guranga in the middle of class.
It's down now. It's down.
Okay. So
It's okay. It's okay.
it's all right. Just leave it. I'm just,
It's perfect. It's perfect.
perfect. So reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 18, text 15. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Tan no Bhavan Vai Bhagavat Pradano Mattamai Kanta Parayanasya Hare Udaram Charitam Vishuddham Shushrushatam No Vitanotu Vidvan Tanno Bhavan Vai Bhagavat Pradano Mahattamai Kanta Parayanasya Hare Udaram Charitam Vishuddham Shushrushatam no Vitanan Shushrushatam no Vitanotu Vidvan Tanno Bhavan Vai Bhagavat Pradano Mahattamai Kanta Parayanasya Hare Udaram Charitam Vishuddham Shushrushatam no Vitanotu Vidvan Tanno Bhavan Vai Bhagavat Pradano Mahattamai Kanta Parayanasya Hare Udaram Charitam Vishuddham
Hare Udaram Charitam Visuddham
Shushrushatam no Vitanat no tu Vidvan
Shushrushatam no Vitanat tu Vidvan.
Okay.
Nano Bhavan Bhai Bhagavat Pradhano
Namo
Bhavan Pradhano Mahatmai Kanta Parayanasya Hare Udaram Charitam Visuddham Susrusitam no Vitano tu Vidvan
Tanno Bhavan Bhai Bhagavat Pradhano Mahatmai Kanta Parayanasya Hare Udaram Charitam Visuddham Shusrusatam no Vitano tu Vidvan
Ladies.
Tanno Bhavan Vai Bhagavat Pradhano Mahatma Kanta Parayanasaya Hare Utram Charitam Visuddham Susrusatam na Vitano tu Vidvan
Susrusatam no Vitano tu Vidvan Tanno Bhavan Bhai Bhagavat Pradhano
Mahatmai Kanta
Parayanasya
Hare Udaram Charitam Visuddham
Hare Udaram Charitam Visuddham
Shushatam Vitano tu Vidvan
Susrusatam no Vitano tu Vidvan
Tanno Bhavan Vai Bhagavat Pradhano
Tanno Bhavan Bhai Bhagavat Pradhano
Mahatmai Kanta Parayanasya
Mahatmai Kanta Parayanasya
Hare Udaram Charitam Visuddham
Hare Udaram Charitam Visuddham
Susrutamana Vitano tu Vidvan
Susrusatam no Vitano tu Vidvan
Okay. Tat. Therefore. Naha. Of us. Vavan. Your good self. Vai. Certainly. Bhagavat. In relation with the personality of Godhead. Pradhanaha. Chiefly. Mahatma. The greatest of all greats. Ekanta. Exclusively. Parayanasya. Of the shelter. Hare. Of the Lord. Udaram. Impartial. Charitam. Activities. Vishuddham. Transcendental. Rushatam. Those who are receptive. Naha. Ourselves. Vitanotu. Kindly describe. Vidvan. Old learned one. So translation. O Sutta Goswami, you are a learned and pure devotee of the Lord because the personality of Godhead is your chief object of service. Therefore, please describe to us the pastimes of the Lord, which are above all material conception. For we are anxious to receive such messages. You repeat. O Sutta Goswami, you are a learned and pure devotee of the Lord. Because the personality of God
Because the personality of Godhead
is your chief object of service.
is your chief object of service.
Therefore, please describe to us
Therefore, please describe to us
the pastimes of the Lord,
the pastimes of the Lord,
which are above all material conception.
which are above all material conceptions.
For we are anxious to receive
For we are anxious to receive
such messages.
such messages.
So, purport is Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada.
Jai
Jesus,
Jai.
Jai. The speaker on the transcendental activities of the Lord should have only one object of worship and service, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the audience for such topics should be anxious to hear about him. When such a combination is possible, namely a qualified speaker and a qualified audience, it is then and there very much congenial to continue discourses on the transcendence. Professional speakers and a materially absorbed audience cannot derive real benefit from such discourses. Professional speakers make a show of Bhagavat Saptaha for the sake of family maintenance, and the materially disposed audience hears such discourses of Bhagavat Saptaha for some material benefit, namely religiosity, wealth, gratification of the senses, or liberation. Such Bhagavatam discourses are not purified from the contamination of the material qualities. For the discourses between the saints of Naimisharanya and Sri Sutta Goswami are on the transcendental level. There is no motive for material gain in such discourses, and limited transcendental pleasure is reached both by the audience and by the speaker, and therefore they can continue the topics for many thousands of years. Now, Bhagavad Saptahas are held for 7 days only, and after finishing the show, both the audience and the speaker become engaged in material activities as usual. They can do so because the speaker is not Bhagavat Prathana, and the audience is not Shushu Shitam, as explained above. So, Hanno Bhavan Vai Bhagavat Pratano Mahattavai Kanta Parayanasya Hare Rudaram Charitam Vishudam Shushu Shatam No Vitano Vidvan. So, Timiranda Shah Vinanjana Shlakaya Chakshur Amerikam Kena Tasman Shigare. So, for those of you who don't know what Bhagavad Saptahas are, we have some newer devotees here. Saptaha, of course, refers to 7. And it's in relationship, this 7 is in relationship to Maharaj Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit was a great king, and he was cursed to die in 7 days because he was offended a small Brahmana, a Brahmana's small son, his name was Sri, and because he had taken a snake, a dead snake, and put it around the head of this young boy's father. And this is a pastime of the Lord. Normally, pure devotees don't do that. They don't take snakes and put it around people's necks, even if they're hungry or thirsty. But, you know, this is a pastime of the Lord. Just take it like that. Not that he was in Maya, hungry, controlled by hunger or thirst. So, anyway, so he was cursed to die in 7 days by the bite of a snake bird, a pakshika. And so, instead of taking some remedial measure, like most of us would do, isn't there some mantra I can chant? Some gem I can wear on my finger. You know, when you go to the astrologers,
Navaratna.
Navaratna, it's called. What gem should I wear to counteract that? And so you see sometimes devotees with rings on all their fingers, or something. And they're counteracting it, and they're performing this puja and that puja. Oh my God! I remember an astrologer once predicted, several astrologers predicted I was supposed to die when I was 55. So I didn't do any sacrifice. I was just counting down the days, you know. When do I get to go back to Godhead? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. It was like a rocket that never blasted off. You know, sometimes you see these rockets at Cape Canaveral.
Yeah.
In the old days, they ignited and just go, bleh, poof. So it was like that, you know, at 55, what happened? I didn't die. Or maybe I am dead and I just haven't realized it yet. Or maybe my material life has died. You know, there's so many ways to interpret astrology, actually. You know, someone said one year, many astrologers said, this is going to be the worst year of your life. It's actually the best year of my life. I had more realization that year than any other year. I said, well, what about Rahu? What about your Saturn period? Well, actually, I'll tell you an interesting story about Saturn. I'm going to do this first. And Hanuman. Once upon a time, Hanuman was the monkey soldier that assisted Lord Ram. So once upon a time, Hanuman was approached by Saturn, and Saturn said, it's your time. Everybody knows that, you know, Shani, the period you're supposed to have when everything goes wrong. What's that rule? Something can go wrong. And will go
Murphy's Law.
Murphy's Law.
Yeah.
So something can go wrong.
It
will go wrong. So Hanuman was approached. Saturn said, yeah, it's your time, Hanuman. Hanuman said, I accept gladly. Please sit on my head. You know, go affect me, sit on my head. So Hanuman was very intelligent. And what he did is he put a lot of mountains on his head too, on top of Saturn. This interesting story. And so Saturn was basically, had his own Saturn period. You understand? He was pretty mature ass. And he said, Hanuman, I'm going to do this. And Hanuman said, all right. If you agree just to bother me for a few seconds, then I'll let you go. So the moral of the story is, if you worship Hanuman, devotees, Hanuman is a pure devotee of the Lord, and the devotees of the Lord and worship Krishna and chant Hare Krishna, you don't have to worry about those things. And sometimes inauspicious things become auspicious. Anyway, getting back to the story of Maharaja Parikshit, he just accepted this as special mercy. Special mercy means when the Lord does something to really help you in devotional service, when you didn't expect it to happen. And so he was cursed to die in 7 days, and he thought, wow, this is great. Why is it great? Because in this way he would know exactly when he was going to die. We do not know exactly when he was going to die, in spite of all the astrologers' predictions. Just like I was talking to Yogindra the other day. And Yogindra says, where are you going to go in the final moments of your life? Are you going to go like 6 months before you die to Govardhan? And I said, no, I'll just go like a few days. And then it was interesting. You remember the conversation?
Yeah.
And he said, but how do you know? But I said, well, if I die anywhere, it's all right. And also, I said, if I go he says, if you go a few days, maybe they won't let you into India. I said, I'll figure it out at that point. We had this discussion. So basically, it's good to know exactly when you're going to die. We don't know that. And so Maharaja Parikshit knew, and there's also a famous story of Maharaj Katvanga. Katvanga Maharaj had been fighting on behalf of the demigods, you know, the powerful, good side of the force people. And he was fighting on behalf of them, and they said, we'll give you a benediction. And anything you want, you can have. Pretty good. And he said, I simply want to know when I'm going to die. And so what happened? He came down immediately to the earth planet, took shelter of Krishna, went back to home, back to Godhead. So it's actually a blessing. You know the exact moment you're going to die. Don't take this in your own hands and say, I know the exact moment I'm going to die. Boo! That doesn't work.
No.
Then you go become a ghost. If you do that, you will become a ghost, a Brahma Rakshasa. And then you'll harass the devotees who don't chant Hare Krishna nicely. Brahma Rakshasa. Anyway, they're very powerful. Ravana was a Brahman Rakshasa, you know. He was a cross between a Brahman and a Rakshasa. His mother was a demon, Rakshasa, and his father was Vishravas, actually a very saintly personality. But he just fell in love. You got to worry about it. You got to be careful about falling in love. Because you may fall in love with a Rakshasa, or Rakshasini, as the case may be. So, anyway, so it's actually good to know when you're going to die. So Parikshit Maharaj just said, this is great. He renounced everything, and he went to speak to the sages and Bhagavatanjis, and he said, you know, what should I do at the time of death? And they had some discussion. That, you know, some of them knew, some of them were speculating. And then along comes Shukadeva Goswami. Shukadeva Goswami had just learned the Bhagavatam, and he was going out on his first Sankirtan excursion. It's described that he was born when he was 16 years old. That's a big pregnancy, you know. In those days, they didn't have C-sections. So anyway, so he was 16 years old, finally was convinced to come out when he heard the pastimes of Krishna. And then he left his father, but later on, it's described, he went back to his father and learned the Srimad Bhagavatam from his father. That's the Bhagavatam. It's not that he left and immediately went out to preach, but he learned the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he was sent out in Sankirtan. So his first Sankirtan day was preaching to Maharaj Parikshit, who was sitting in the bank of the Ganges, you know, fasting for the time of death. And Shukadeva Goswami comes, and he's still only 16 years old, and he's not wearing any clothes, and people don't really, the general mass of people don't understand, you know, what is his position. You know, here's a naked guy, you know, in the Western world we call that streaking. Isn't it?
Yes.
So, I mean, people just didn't understand. People were making fun and throwing things at him. But when he arrived, all the sages could understand he was a great devotee. I mean, he had, his physiognomy was indicative of a great personality. There's different ratios in the body that indicate that someone is a great personality. You know, the hands are a certain length, they go down to the knees when one's standing up. That's one ratio. And, you know, the eyes go a little bit much further than any of our eyes. We just have beady eyes. And they're almost like lotus-like eyes. And so it's very beautiful. So they could see from the physiognomy, and also they knew it was Vyasadev's son, and also they knew they were self-realized sages. So they all got up and offered respect to this personality, and then he sat on the asana and began to teach the Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit. And he taught it for 7 days. So Maharaj Parikshit, instead of, let us say, making some remedial measure, he just said, well, listen to the Bhagavatam. And when it came time, he accepted the bite of the snake bird, Takshaka, who came in like an apple. It was like he appeared as a little worm in an apple. And just jumped out of the apple and bit Maharaj Parikshit. I think the whole story, that on his way to bite Maharaj Parikshit, he ran into his father, Kashyapa Muni. The story's there in Bhagavatam. And Kashyapa Muni had the remedial measure for poison. And Kashyapa Muni said, you know, I can cure Maharaj Parikshit even after he's bitten. And Takshaka said, prove it. And Kashyapa said, all right, burn this tree down with your poison. So he burned a tree down with his poison, and Kashyapa Muni threw some, whatever it was, mantra, whatever, and the tree came back to life. So there's actually a description in the Mahabharata about this, that Takshaka was quite upset that it wasn't going to work, his poison. So he sort of bribed Kashyapa, gave him a donation. Of course, that's pretty much the standard in many places in India. Anyway, he convinced him that this was Krishna's plan. convince him. He says, Kashyapa couldn't be right. So he convinced Kashyapa Muni, and then he went, and he was going to bite Maharaj Parikshit. Actually, before Maharaj Parikshit got bitten, he taught the essence of the Srimad Bhagavatam to his mother. He was a good son. And that's called the Bhagavatam Rita, which is written by Sanatana Goswami, Brihad Bhagavatam Rita. So, which is a very beautiful book that's been published in ISKCON and translated by Gopi Puranadana Prabhu, my dear godbrother, who passed away a number of years ago. So anyway, so after 7 days he got bit and Parikshit Maharaj went back to Godhead. So that's the beginning of Bhagavad Saptaha, the 7 days of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So modern day people, they imitate that. They say, we're going to have, it's very popular in India, of course, that great dramatic personalities, I'm using the word dramatic personalities, I'm not criticizing them, I guess I am, but great personalities who are very expert in drama. They perform these Bhagavad Saptahas. And they really concentrate on the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, particularly Krishna's relationship with the gopis. And they do it in a very dramatic fashion. I've seen them. They have, the people come to the Bhagavad Saptahas, and of course mostly the ladies are up front, the men are in the back. And in the middle of describing some pastime, let's say they're talking about Krishna lifting Govardhan Hill. I'm not going to be so intimate to talk about the gopis today. But anyway, let's say they're talking about Krishna lifting Govardhan Hill, and all of a sudden they'll break into song. It's like a Broadway musical.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. They'll break into song. Govinda Jai Jai Go, like Indian music. Gopala Jai. You've heard them like that, haven't you? Of course, they're a little more expert than me.
Yes, that was horrible.
Wait a second. I was just doing
Sorry.
it. I can do it really, but I'm just doing it in jest. So they chant like that, and everyone in the audience are going and doing it too. And it's like, wow, it's just really entertaining. It's really entertaining. And they keep the audience's attention. Actually, when they do talk about the other parts of the Bhagavatam, the audience goes out and eats. Because I've seen at other times of the day when the other parts of the Bhagavatam, other than, if they do, other parts of the Bhagavatam, it's pretty vacant in the tent. They set up these giant pandals, it's called. It's pretty vacant. But when they get to the evenings when they get into the nectar, then that's when they go for it. It's. I guess it's the Indian equivalent of some of the preachers that we have in the West that make a lot of money. I mean, drama really draws people in. I mean, I was just sent a video of a Western preaching event, not Hare Krishna, fortunately, and I showed it to Yogendra, right? Where the minister has everyone, it's even more dramatic than the Indian Bhagavad Saptahas. The minister has everyone like rolling on the ground and laughing and jumping up and down. Ooh, like I said, so it's passion. It's really passion. Because really Krishna's pastimes and Krishna's holy name have to descend. They can't just it's not like you can understand it. But just like someone goes to Vrindavan, for example. And Vrindavan is covered with a layer of Yoga Maya, that if you're not ready, you don't see the real Vrindavan. You just see the pigs and the dogs and the hogs and everything like that. And it's interesting too, I think monkeys are quite interesting. I even had a picture of myself with millions of monkeys around and sent it to my mother because I thought she'd appreciate it. So, because when I was young, we would go to Florida, there's this place called Monkey Jungle. And I would go there, and my mother would take me and say, look, now I'm in Monkey Jungle again. So they see Vrindavan just as Monkey Jungle. And it's not, there's something happening that you can't see, or you can't see, maybe you can see. But right below the surface is that Prabhupada said there's a veneer. Veneer means like a covering. Like if you have, sometimes you have cheap wood. I don't know if any of this wood's cheap wood. But it's a covering, so it makes wood look expensive when it's actually cheap. It's just chipboard or something like that. So there's a very thin covering of this Maya that keeps people from seeing. So in the same way, when there's Krishna Katha that's not being recited by the crowd reciting, then the person's actually coming in touch with Maya, or the modes of nature. Like that verse, Bhutam Harikatam Ritam Shavananaya Vikartagam Shakra Chistitapayam Vaishnava Mukot, that when you hear about Krishna from someone who is not free from the motivation of self-service, then it may have poisonous effects. In other words, the modes of nature are there. So, really, I'm not criticizing every Bhagavad Sapta person, but Prabhupada here comments on this. And the people are not really coming there to enjoy Krishna Katha. They're coming there to enjoy a dramatic performance in the name of Krishna Katha. I mean, maybe some people. Don't want to generalize, say everyone. So, and the person who is performing it, let's talk about motivation. It was interesting, when I was in university studying psychology, I took some courses in motivation. What motivates people. So, there's different things that motivate different people according to the modes of nature. Of course, generally, in the Bhagavad Saptaha thing, the reciter is motivated, let's say, profit, adoration, distinction. Profit meaning not only money, but just like you really, like if you're a dramatist, you really like it when everyone claps for you. It's like if you win the Sankirtan Marathon, you're given a certain, I'm not saying that's bad, and you win a prize, and everyone's like, whoa, he's so great. Or you get a trophy. When I was young, I got trophies for things. Not for chanting, but, I had certain sporting things that I did, and I had trophies, and everyone puts them up. I remember there was one lady who joined the movement. She was an expert debater. And I asked her, did they give you a trophy with a big mouth on it? Because you golf, you have a golf glove, and baseball, you have a baseball bat, and I guess debating, just a big fat mouth. Anyway. So profit, adoration, and distinction. Of course, that, as we know, that's subtle sex life. Mode of passion. It says a mode of passion. That you wanted people to love, to appreciate you. Not just love. I mean, of course we do want people to love us, and we want Krishna to love us, and love in exchange, that's fine. But just to get adulation, praise. Of course there's that statement that he who praises me is my enemy, right? He who chastises me is my friend. I got a lot of friends. So, not so many enemies. Anyway, so they're enjoying very much. Like a dramatist enjoys very much being on the stage. It's just, there's a certain kick to it, a certain high to it. And of course, there's the money too, which is also a good high. They make a lot of money. And so it's very mixed motives. So it's a mode of passion. So let's talk about motives. I want to talk about motives because in regard to preaching Krishna consciousnness. Like there's different motives that one may have in preaching Krishna consciousness in the modes of nature, and there may be transcendental motives. So of course, in the mode of ignorance, you may be just trying, pay for my prashadam or something like that, so I can eat at the end of it. passion because you want to win the Sankirtan marathon, want to be considered the best. In the mode of goodness, you're thinking yourself as the benefactor of all these people. That's like a very subtle thing. Like charity in the mode of goodness is charity, of course, the Bhagavad Gita describes without any gross ulterior motive, but you do have it makes you feel good. In the mode of goodness, you become entangled by the sense of happiness. Krishna describes that in the Gita. You become entangled by a sense of material happiness. Like you look up in the sky and see the stars. I'm not saying we shouldn't look up in the sky and see the stars. I mentioned yesterday I did that. So, like you just say, oh, it's beautiful, but there's no God. That's the material mode of goodness. Oh, it's so beautiful, sunset so beautiful, this, that is so beautiful. But it's not, like Krishna says in the 10th chapter of the Gita, whatever glorious manifestations there are springs from the very spark of my splendor. It's interesting, the 10th chapter of the Gita, Krishna gives a whole list of all these opulences, and then he says, what is the use of all this explanation at the end of the 10th chapter? Because, just from frankly, an insignificant spark of my splendor, these things are manifest. Anyway, so that's mode of goodness, and the mode of transcendental mode, which is described here. Actually, you got this word in the verse. Vishuddha. Okay, here we go. Vishuddha means transcendental, like Vishuddha Sattva. You understand? Shuddha is just the mode of goodness. But Vishuddha transcendental means the motivation, here this is described here. It says, because the personality, this is in the translation, because the personality of God is your chief object of service. What that means is his motivation is simply to please Krishna. Mm-hmm. And bring people to Krishna consciousness, because that pleases Krishna. But everything's centered on pleasing Krishna. And on the spiritual master, which is not different than pleasing Krishna. So, that's the transcendental mode of goodness, the motivation. I mean, you can be doing the same thing, but it's a question of the motivation. Actually, the motivation determines whether it's bhakti yoga or just karma yoga, too. Karma yoga, you could be doing everything for Krishna, but your motivation may not be that. It may be just like, well, let me free myself from all my sinful activities. I mean, of course, Krishna understands that. In the Gita, he says, people come to him because they have these other motivations. They're looking for wealth. They're passionate, right? As far as I know. They're in distress. They're a relief of distress, mixture of passion and goodness. They're looking for knowledge. That's also, I guess it's some goodness thing. Yeah, it's goodness, generally, material goodness. They're looking for knowledge, or they're inquisitive. That's a little goodness there. So, Krishna understands. Oh, you gotta cook the rice over. Okay. That's nice. So their motivation is good. They're not running away because they don't like me. They have to serve Krishna. So, Krishna understands when people have all these other motivations. So the question is, how do we have the right motivation, in terms of how do we have the Vishuddha Sattva motivation when we're pleasing Krishna? When we're not on that platform. We're probably on the platform, Rajaguna if we're lucky. And maybe, a little mixture of goodness there. Anyway, so how do we have that motivation? Well, I was thinking about this. Because basically, we have to be honest. We're not on the platform of the Dhanam, the Janam, the Sundarim, Kavidam, Jagadishi, Janmani, Janmeshwari, Bhavatat Bhakti, Vita Pichari. Anyone here on that platform? Mm-hmm. Of course, if you were, you wouldn't say, so that's a trick question. If you were actually on that platform, you'd be so humble, you say no. So, but if, anyway, so how do we do it? And, you know, because we're asked to go out and preach, we're asked to serve Krishna, we're asked to do bhakti yoga, you know, to serve Krishna with the motivation of trying to please him. That's bhakti yoga. Karma yoga is serving, you know, offering it, all that you do, all that you offer, should be done as an offering to Krishna. But that's, in one sense, external, without the right motivation. So, my conclusion, actually the conclusion of the acharyas, is that that's why we have a spiritual master. So the spiritual master we can relate to. I mean, in my particular situation, I mean, I could relate to Prabhupada very nicely, but Krishna's really up there. You know, he's controlling, you know, like I said, I was describing, you know, he's controlling everything going on in the cell, everything going on in the atom. You know, I can't, and it was described in the previous verse that his glories are unlimited. It says, his transcendental attributes cannot even be measured by such masters of mystic powers as Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. And I ain't on the level of Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, I assure you. So, how do we understand Krishna? We understand Krishna through Krishna's devotees. Really, I mean, that's, to me, you know, Prabhupada, I mean, he's a pure devotee. I'm not saying I understand Prabhupada fully, but I can relate to Prabhupada. You know, I can see it. He's an example of Bhagavad Gita in action. He's the personification, in one sense, of the Bhagavad Gita. So how do you understand Sarvanamam Pritasham Kam Sharanam Praja? What does it mean? I mean, I know what it means, but how does it mean practically? And then you see Prabhupada. What does it mean? Well, Prabhupada got the order from his guru, go to the Western world, preach Krishna consciousness, success potency is built into the order of the spiritual master. Bingo. What do you say? Some of you may not know what that word bingo means. Bingo means you hit the jackpot, basically. Bingo is a game where a bunch of old ladies, you know, playing at the neighborhood church. You know, A13 or something like that. Oh, it's not A13, no. B13, sorry. So that's it. You know, we have to understand Srila Prabhupada. That was the conclusion, understanding for all of us, understanding Srila Prabhupada. And we think of pleasing Prabhupada, and we know what pleases Prabhupada, and it's very practical, it's modern, it's down to earth. Wow. And then we develop a relation with Prabhupada and other advanced devotees that we serve the Vaishnavas, Mahatseva, Muktis, as described in the Bhagavatam, by serving a Mahatma, a great soul, and the door to liberation, or the Muktis, the door to liberation, and so on. So, to me, that's the secret of having the right motivation and being a proper, transparent medium for giving Krishna consciousness to others. Because we were asked to sit here, just like I'm sitting here on this seat, you know, the asana. Normally the requirement is to sit on the asana, you have to be free from all material desires. So if we actually had that absolute requirement here, you know, posted picture, a sign, do not sit here unless you're free of all material desires. You have no other desire other than to serve the Lord. You've never thought of anything else. You're not at all self-centered. Please do not sit in this seat. It will be a great offense and you will go to hell. So, see, it would be vacant. I mean, it's a lake. Just, you know, I would certainly be scared. And even if you were pure, you wouldn't think you're pure, right? I mean, even if you were on the level, you're not going near that seat. That's a dangerous seat. That's a hot seat. You'll go to hell. I mean, it's just like Prabhupada said, that if the GBC, one of his GBC members makes a mistake, he has to take birth as a Shudra in his next life. So that's a discouraging statement. And if someone's temple president, they have to take the reactions of whatever's going on in the temple like a king is. Let me us, you know. So, no, because if we can actually think like that, you know, why are we doing this? And just another thing, you know, the preaching of Krishna consciousness, I just want to end with this, should never be done for the idea of making money. It's not that you go and give a lecture because you're thinking of the money that's going to be there. And the money should go to Krishna anyway. And I'll end with one story from this story is from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Jaiva Dharma. And once upon a time, as all stories go, there was a Brahmin who preached Krishna consciousness. His name was Brajanath. Some of you may know this story, but anyway, if you read the Jaiva Dharma. So Brajanath went to his guru, his Siksha guru, and he said, Guru Maharaj, I make my living by giving Bhagavatam class, basically preaching, and people give me money. He was a householder who was getting money from that. And Guru Maharaj said, no. Make your money in some other way. Do some business. Even if you're Brahman, do some business. But don't make your money through your preaching, because there's a tendency to have ulterior motives. If one is making something for oneself out of one's spiritual activities, I mean, it's a great danger. So one has to be very, very careful of motivation. That was the point. Very, very careful of motivation. If one wants to become a pure devotee of the Lord, not just like spin his wheels or her wheels for the next 10,000 lifetimes. All right, any other questions? Oh, other questions. Other questions. Questions, comments, arguments, problems, issues, requests? Yes.
The 7-day Bhagavatam discourses are so popular in India that there are several ISKCON devotees who do them.
Yeah.
Take advantage of that popularity and chant the Bhagavatam according to Srila Prabhupada's teachings.
Yeah, they're using that as sort of a trick. It's not that they're actually doing the same thing as the Bhagavad Saptaha people are doing, but they're labeling it like that. Just like devotees sometimes will say, well, we're going to teach, I have one disciple, for example, and he teaches Hatha Yoga. He's actually I would say he's probably among the top 5 yogis in the world, as far as asanas are concerned. He does things that other yogis have told me are impossible. But anyway, so he teaches yoga and he makes devotees. You know, so what he's doing is when he's teaching yoga, he's using that as a trick. And he sort of screens the people he's teaching yoga to and sees who can become devotee. And he's made, like, over the last year, this is interesting, he's made over the last year about 20 devotees.
What?
From all over the world. He's actually quite famous. He has yoga schools in many different countries. And he makes the devotees, and he's like their Siksha guru, and I'm their Diksha guru. You know, just like I was in Mexico, and I was one of the people he made, initiated by me. Very nice, really nice, intelligent person. So anyway, so devotees sometimes use something to attract people, like labeling or something like that, or like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, if you want to keep a devotee, you give him balam rice with ghee on it. I'm sure you've heard that story before. Mm-hmm. No, you haven't? Yes? No.
Maybe.
Okay. So once upon, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, if we want to keep the devotees, he told a story to illustrate how to keep devotees. He said, once upon a time there was a man who couldn't keep his servants. The servants kept running away because it was a little tough on him. Didn't pay him that much. And he went to his friend and he said, how can I keep my servants? Every 2 weeks I'm losing a servant. And the man said, his friend said, you have to feed them like basmati rice. You don't know what balam rice is, but it's like basmati rice, real fancy rice. You have to feed them basmati rice with a lot of ghee in it. Do that for about 3 weeks. So he kept feeding them basmati rice with tons of ghee. I don't know if any of you remember when we first joined the movement, everything had ghee on it. And it's, you know, it's addictive. And so what happened is he did that, and after 3 weeks he stopped feeding the guy, his servant. And the servant went away for one day and he came right back. Because he couldn't forget the taste. So in the same way, to attract people to Krishna consciousness, we give them really opulent food in the beginning. And after a while, just some dry bread rolls. Ah, sorry. No. No, when you get older, you discover you cannot eat like that anymore. Unless you want to have your Bhagavatam very quickly. You die. So in other words, to introduce people to Krishna consciousness, we don't so much preach that they should follow the footsteps of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. You know, after a while, naturally, renunciation manifests itself in the heart. As one is progressing, Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayati Asuvailagyam Jnanam Charyada Haitakam. It happens naturally. So when presenting Krishna consciousness, sometimes, you know, we advertise yoga or Bhagavad Sapta, but the preaching always has to be pure. And the motivation of the person who is doing it can't be pecuniary or financial. It has to be pure motivation. You know, like Prabhupada one time he said, chant Hare Krishna and stay high forever. You know, what does stay high mean? You know, my generation, my generation is the hippie generation, being high meant, you know, taking drugs. You know, sometimes I remember watching people who were taking LSD one time. And it wasn't me. And they were taking it. And one person was saying to the other, "Are you high yet? Have you gotten off yet?" And then, "Not yet. I'm just waiting." So it takes time to act. Anyway, don't try it. So Prabhupada says, stay high forever. And you can. In Krishna consciousness, by chanting the words, holy names, and really high. I mean, taking drugs is stay low forever. It's like the subterranean heavenly planets, you know, something like that. That you think you're in heaven, but all that you have are lights lit by snakes, jewels on their hoods. So any other questions, comments, arguments, problems? Yes?
Maharaja, you were talking a little bit about like people that, like sometimes how we feel that like maybe we want to be recognized or, you know, noticed and things like that. And you were saying that's in the mode of passion.
That's passion.
And so
it's mixed.
Could you just elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, if you read the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Piladev really elaborates on that. He talks about devotional service in different modes of nature. The motivation or the goals of devotees in different modes. So, one should be honest with oneself. A sage is sometimes described as being introspective. That means honest. You know, what is my motivation? Why am I doing this? I mean, not that you feel guilty while I'm doing this because I like winning the trophy. But at least understand what your motivation is. And also it helps you be humble. You don't have to beat yourself up, feel guilty. Oh no, I'm useless, I'm hopeless, I'm worthless. I'm a dog, a worm in a dog stool. That's about as bad as you can get. You know, be a worm in a devotee stool is kind of cute. And nice. But in a dog stool, I mean, that's yuck. So, you don't want to get into that, you know, because that's simply self-centeredness. You know, depression is another type of self-centeredness. People depressed, you can see they use the personal pronouns quite a bit in their speech. I, me, feel, etc. So just realize, I'm not on the highest level, then you pray to Krishna. Just one day I hope to come to the highest level, associate with Prabhupada, hearing Prabhupada, and so, this will help me come to the highest level. What do they say? Failure is the pillar of success. You take your lackings, how you're lacking, and not you, of course, but speaking rhetorically, how someone is lacking in their spiritual progress, you take it as a challenge. It takes a challenge. I often tell everybody there's no problems, there's only challenges and opportunities. So even our own lack of Krishna consciousness is a challenge. It's like a Kshatriya challenge, isn't it? Well, I'm not Krishna conscious. Well, I got a lot to do. Jolly. Let me work at it. Otherwise, if you think you're Krishna conscious, there's no challenge, there's no impetus. You just sit back in your whatever and, drink the nectar drink. Kool-Aid. Anyways. Yeah.
What about the person that would be like always wanting or expecting praise, kind of that attention seeker? How do you...
Well, how do you deal with it? Well, that's...
How do you deal with it? How do you get over it?
Okay, so that involves... Now we're going to morph into psychology. And in my book I talk about that. So everybody at all times is actually acting according to the different needs that they have. And if someone appears to be asking for attention, they have some need. Probably one of the basic needs, like love. And that's there's nothing wrong with that. And all those needs can be fulfilled in a Krishna conscious way. But not that you feel that it's your responsibility to be fulfilling other people's needs. It's called codependency. But you can help the person understand. If you read my book, you'll understand that. You can facilitate people in understanding what their needs are and them coming up with strategies to fulfill those needs. Because if you give people the strategies, they don't own the strategies. People have to own them. But to help them understand, you have a need for love. Maybe you want to get a teddy bear. I don't know. Or get married, whatever, or make friendship. You don't have to suggest that. But they just have to know that, and not be embarrassed about their needs. Sometimes you hear people criticize others and say, you are very needy. But everybody's needy. We have a need for fun, recreation, friendship. I'm needy for air. And light. And prasada, food. I'm admitting it. I'm living with this body. So why don't we just admit our basic needs? And some people have more of one basic need than another. It manifests or morphs in a different way. But that's life. So to help them understand and let them come up with a solution. Your solution for them is no solution. They're the ones who have to understand, why they're doing so. And it's also important when dealing with them not to label them and say and think, oh, she's an emotional drain. Then you just see them as a big drain, a walking drain, a walking vacuum, basically emotional vacuum. So it's really important. It takes some work. If you get a copy of my book, it'll help with that. You have a copy, right?
I do.
Yeah, you have a copy already. So it's not
Read it now.
really helps. And actually, it's not just some modern philosophy I'm preaching, based on Maslow. It's actually something that Bhaktivinoda Thakur also talked about in his Chaitanya Shikshāmrita, that we all have basic needs. All of our basic needs have to be satisfied if we're going to progress in spiritual life. Because if you take away my air, I ain't going to be chanting Hare Krishna too well. And I'm not going to be able to think of Krishna if I can't breathe. And if I'm hungry, I'm not going to be able to think of Krishna. The stomach's going to be talking louder than my japa. So it's important to recognize those basic needs. Those needs are not detrimental to Krishna consciousness when the strategies are in tune with Krishna consciousness. Does that make sense?
Yes,
The needs are just needs, whatever. But the strategies we don't have to, but if we want to be Krishna conscious, we develop strategies that are consistent with our Krishna consciousness. How does that sound? And, if someone is doing his Sankirtan because he likes the praise, that person may be on that platform, may need that appreciation at that particular point. But they should be introspective to realize that and not be embarrassed. Admit whatever faults we have. And what's the problem? What's the problem? I don't want to see myself as being faultless. And then you have to really come up to that mark all the time. Then it's so much anxiety to think of yourself as having no faults, isn't it? It's a lot easier. Well, I'm full of faults. Boy, I can relax now. You made a mistake. So what? I made a mistake. I'll try my best next time, but whatever. I'm not a pure devotee. It's really hard to think of oneself as a pure devotee, because then it's too big a strain. Better to be just a servant of a pure devotee. So, any other questions? Yes.
Jai Maharaj, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
I was able to catch a couple of your classes, I'm so glad. Concerning the point that you said about the prestige, looking for prestige, reputation, or whatever,
Yeah.
I heard that in Krishna consciousness also there is a good pride, there is a good spiritual pride, like from performing your service.
Looking for appreciation from the pure devotees, yes. Like from Prabhupada, to be patted on the head by Prabhupada or the Guru and just say, good boy, or good girl. I hate this expression, but, I would love like Prabhupada to say, well, thank you very much, you did a nice service, But to get the adulation from the crowd, or, and become popular or something like that. I mean, it's not wrong to be popular, but the motivation, that's what we're talking about. Yeah, we should want the approval of the Vaishnavas, that is true. But the approval is different from the praise, the effusive praise. Now, if you really want to get technical, there's a difference between praise and appreciation. We have a need for appreciation, but appreciation is quite different than praise. Praise is just a general thing. Like, you are so great, you are so wonderful, you're the best Sankirtan devotee. Appreciation should be something like, thank you for distributing 10,000 Bhagavad Gitas over the month of December. And I really am happy with this. It pleases Prabhupada. That's like appreciation. But praise is like a general thing. So I'm really getting more specific now. Like, you're great. Here he is, the great. Like if I'm thinking, here's the great Hare Krishna. Walk into the room. Jai Haribo. Anyway, I don't know if I should get into these stories. But once upon a time, it's not me, there was one of my godbrothers who would not leave his room unless people were chanting his name. The crowd was chanting his name outside of his room.
Wow.
It's not criticism. I mean, he's a good friend of mine. So, That's a little too much. So, anyway. Johnny me, you know. So, anyway, I mean, we were all young. We all did crazy things. When Prabhupada left the planet, we were all in our 20s. You know, mid-20s or something like that. And, you know, to have a spiritual movement, a serious spiritual movement in the hands of 20-year-old kids is a recipe for disaster. You know, and somehow we made it. We made it, oh my God. I don't know how we made it. I mean, that's because it's Krishna's mercy, Prabhupada's desire. Otherwise, it would be like a transcendental Lord of the Flies, you know. It was quite interesting, but I don't want to go through another interesting time like that. Okay, I think we have to end now because I think I have a need for Prashad.
Do you think we'll be all right tomorrow?
With the rain?
With the Rata, yeah.
Did they change the forecast?
I don't know.
I haven't checked this morning. But anyway, it's supposed to be heavy rain around the time of the Ratha Yatra, and it would be warm, and you know, they purchase raincoats for everybody. You know, ponchos, rain ponchos for everybody. So I'm going.
Still 100%.
It's 100%, yeah.
Yeah, so
100%. But anyway, we got to get a poncho for Lord Jagannath too.
Yes.
And Subhadra and Balaram and Prabhupada.
no rain today.
Anyway, let's see what Krishna wants.
He can do anything he wants.
Yes, he can do anything he wants. He can stop the rain. He can lift up Govardhan Hill and protect the Ratha Yatra if he wants. Let's see. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah.
Shri Jai.